All right, welcome into a shipper update. I've got our lead economist, Anthony Smith, here. I think we're going to take a look at some manufacturing data. What do you got for us?
That's right. So, Andrew, we have the ISM PMI, of course, one of my favorite indices for the manufacturing segment. So we have the ISM PMI here in the blue line, and in the orange line, we have our very own flatbed outbound tender rejection index, of course, the main trailer type to haul a lot of these manufactured goods. And so when we're looking at this is going to be something for upstream shippers, of course. And so we're seeing that there's been some increases throughout the last few months for the ISM PMI, showing that there is some expansion within manufacturing. The latest month shows that there was a 61.2% point index reading, so showing that there's some expansion. Anything above 50 is indicative of expansion within manufacturing. Anything below 50, indicative of contraction.
So this marks many months we've had this ISM PMI at a positive and expansionary territory off the bottom there that we felt kind of in the middle or the beginning of the pandemic last year. Tell me why we're taking a look here at the flatbed rejection rate. Does this give us a good look at demand and supply here? Because I know, our outbound tender volume index, we break that down by van and by reefer,
right,
but we also have the flatbed rejection rate. So talk to me a little bit about this index.
Definitely. So with the flatbed outbound tender rejection index, it's going to show the capacity, as you know, for those flatbed trailer types. And so when there's more flatbed activity, tighter capacity, that's usually going to be indicative of actual real-time movement of either those manufactured goods, those of course oversized goods that you might see on the highway with police escorts. And you might also see them with construction materials. A lot of times you see lumber and building product materials. So when you're seeing some tightness within that capacity for flatbed trailers, I'm thinking first thing, manufacturing and construction activity. Of course, those two being two segments that have been kind of ramping up throughout the last few months here. In our next chart, we're going to look at some of the headwinds that we're seeing impacting the overall manufacturing industry. And of course, that one that I've been talking about, magnesium, is prices. And so we see that prices are now at 88 percentage points, nearing historic highs. We had a slight dip down, but that dip down isn't indicative of any type of movement down in prices. It's just showing that it's expanding continuously at a slower rate, if you can call 88 percentage points a slower rate.
Right. In this index here, does transportation costs get put into this, or is this kind of raw materials and actually manufacturing costs?
This is all raw materials and manufacturing costs, but transportation prices do have a factor into this as well. We also have the LMI that has the Logistics Managers Index that has transportation prices that we're going to talk about next week, especially when we have Zach Rogers on Freightonomics, a little shameless plug there. And we're going to talk about what's happening with those manufacturing prices or those transportation prices, especially as it relates to warehousing. But when we're looking at manufacturing, we're seeing prices for those raw goods and those commodities skyrocket. We're just talking about shortages with Haley over there on some of those headlines talking about what's happening with retailers. A lot of that stuff is happening upstream as well, and it has those downstream effects that we're seeing playing out real time right now.
I asked the question because, as we know with our outbound tender reject index for whatever mode that we're looking at, they have a high correlation with directionally, at least with spot rates and with contract rates. So, if we saw that big surge in flatbed outbound tender rejection index, that would indicate that we're probably seeing higher spot rates, higher contract rates on the flatbed side, as we are in reefer and in van as well. So that would make sense. And, it makes sense that this hasn't included all of the prices, commodity, transportation, logistics. There are prices going up across the board.
Exactly. And the other thing that's going up or should be going up is going to be seen in our next chart. What we have that's really impacting manufacturing overall and really the overall economy is employment. So we're seeing manufacturing employment. The ISM breaks out many different components and within this monthly index. And this is the employment side. So it just dipped down to 50.9, so just above that just above that contractionary point. And so we're seeing that is showing that there's some slower movement for employment. And that's one of the things that correspondents have been saying a lot throughout these reports, is that they're struggling to find more labor, adequate labor to fill these roles to kind of increase the ramp up in manufacturing and production.
Do you think this is more a function of just not being able to source the right labor, or not a function of them, not wanting to add the labor?
I think it's going to be sourcing the right labor for sure, but then you have to also consider those that have been receiving those unemployment benefits have to play some type of effect into this whole thing. But the big thing is that a lot of these manufacturers were increasing some technological efficiencies throughout COVID. So they had to make do with a few types of changes. And so I can only imagine that a lot of people that were in these roles before COVID-19 are now stepping back into these roles, but they're slightly different. I'm sure there's a little bit different skill sets. Maybe they have to learn a little bit more programming skills to kind of get around some of these technological changes. So they might not be stepping back into the same positions that they left.
And I don't mean to put you on a spot, we only have a few seconds here, but do you think this is somewhat a factor of wage? Do you think if wages were to increase and give somebody more of incentive, that would have them, give them better options getting back into the market?
Definitely that could play a factor. And I know even before the pandemic, we were seeing that there were some incentives of signing bonuses, relocation, things like that, packages put out. So I'm sure that's still going to be at play here. And it's just going to be coming down to finding those right labor and really getting those employees in the right position.
Yeah, it seems like these manufacturers are going to need to get a little aggressive with their hiring. All right, Definitely. Anthony, thank you so much.